This is Roger Struckoff with Syscon TV at Cloud Expo East in New York, day 2. Sitting here with Steve Anderson from BMC. And you know, it's interesting, before we went on camera, we were talking a little bit about operations. Everyone wants to talk about operations at this show, which is great. 2 years ago, they wanted to talk, all the developers wanted to talk. Now, cloud, I don't know how mainstream it's becoming, but it's definitely over in the operations side, it's a big focus. So anyway, Steve, thanks for joining us. What am I talking about when I say operations? What's your world right now?
So I think it's sort of the maturation of cloud utilization and the move to the cloud, right? The developer-centric thing is really important because that's why we're releasing things and pushing things out in a cloud fashion, much faster, more directly accessible. But you can't forget the fact that after it's deployed, it's now out there for some period of time, and it's part of your attack surface. It's part of your management burden. These are things that we can't lose sight of the fact that there is still a tax, if you will, on the things that have been deployed. There's a price to be paid for taking care of those things and making sure that they're meeting the necessary performance measurements and expectations, that they are cared for in terms of vulnerability conditions and compliance, depending on what regulatory policies you might be beholden to.
You know, we joke, no offense to developers, no offense, they don't like changes in their cages, you know, but operations is the real world. That's something maybe you think about philosophically when you're developing, but once you deploy, there you go. So attack surface, that's such a scary term, but how do you deal with that with your customers?
So what we've observed, and I think there's surveys that bear this out, is that from the time a vulnerability is publicized by an operating system vendor or a platform vendor, it takes upwards of 6 months before those vulnerabilities are actually addressed in enterprise systems. That's crazy. So the reason that happens is within the enterprise, those are two separate teams. You've got the security team that's got their vulnerability tools, and they produce this brick of a report and drop it on the desk of the operations team, say, here, go do something about this, which is completely impractical, and that's why it takes so long to get done. What we have brought to the market is what we call a SecOps solution that merges what comes out of the vulnerability scanning tools into the server configuration management and automation tools, because it has all the information about the patches that will resolve those vulnerabilities that have been found, and it can help organize and prioritize which servers do I need to act on first because of criticality and overall value to the organization. So it gives you a to-do list from an operations standpoint and a means of communicating back and forth, a central dashboard, so that both security and operations are kind of singing from the same songbook, right? And you can see the burn down of these vulnerabilities have been addressed across this number of servers, and we're driving towards getting those closed out.
Is it a matter of your customers know they have this problem when they come to you, or know they have a problem but not really the extent?
They absolutely know they have this problem, but it's just been accepted somehow. Like, it was just the state of the art, that was the best we could do, that's just how it is. But when you look at it, you realize this is shockingly insufficient. This can't go on this way, and so that's what's driven us to help bridge this gap and take that 6-month window down to much shorter turnaround times.
What other big issues come up? You mentioned the attack service and a few other things.
Yeah, so there's the tying in for performance monitoring, particularly when you're talking about the actual externally facing result of the DevOps sequence, right? There's a lot of stages that go on internally, but ultimately you're pushing this out externally, and this needs to be instrumented for monitoring so that you have information about issues before your customers get to a point where they're frustrated and they just go somewhere else. So having the deployments prepared for and instrumented for that kind of monitoring, tied into solutions like TrueSight from BMC, is an important step. All of this has to be accounted for in the original deployment. because once it gets out into production, your opportunity to go back and rewire and replumb for that kind of stuff, operations is usually very leery of going and touching things that are already running. So making it part of the bake-in or up front is really critical.
I remember BMC from way back, been around a long time. So what sort of industries are you in now? And do you have sort of a typical customer or typical use case, or is it really, really all over the place?
The typical customer is going to be large enterprises of hundreds of servers in their data center, sometimes well beyond that into the several thousands. In terms of industry verticals, we pretty much run the spectrum. Whether obviously a lot of folks that we're talking here this week, being in New York, you're a lot of financial customers, but the use cases for at least the cloud management platform standpoint, it usually starts with dev test type personas, because they're the most frequent churn of environments. And what we're trying to do is make the deployment of a fully coordinated, fully configured and orchestrated environment with all of these instrumentations, all easy, self-service, so that the dev teams get what they need without having to go through anybody else to get that. So it really is an efficiency and an agility emphasis.
Where are you online? What's your URL?
bmc.com/cloud.
Yeah, if you go to /cloud, you're going to find everything you need to know. Plus, listen to Steve, listen to everyone there. Operations, where we are getting mature, and it's really a nice change from a few years ago. I think the hard work is not over, but the really hard push at the beginning, we're finally getting past that. So thanks to companies like yours, and thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching. For Syscon TV, this is Roger Struckoff.